everybody. Welcome back to Mob Vlog. Today is kind of an emergency broadcast, let's call it, all right? Because during our broadcast on the 13th, on Redness Day last week, Red said something, made a little mistake, and we want to clear that up right away. So that's what we're going to do today, guys. Mob Vlog. How's it going today, Red?
Well, it's going. It could be better. I'm not too pleased with what happened. I made a lot of mistakes.
Well, let's first, I just want to let everyone know what was said and what happened. And this is the section that we're referring to. We're just going to roll the about a minute of the broadcast from Wednesday. Here we go.
Well, I know there was a Don Berlin that owned IS Berlin, and he lived in Lake Point Towers, and Joe DiLeonardi was the first officer on the scene, and somehow he got raised to sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and eventually he became under Byrne, Mayor Byrne, became chief of detectives, and then he was just sent off to after death threats and everything. He was sent off to finish his duty, just sitting as a district commander, and he didn't associate with anybody after that, but he made his rank that way. And that's an interesting, it's a homicide because it was a death. There was a young girl that went through the window, and they had actually people on cables running at the window to see if they could break it, and they couldn't break it. But it was never solved. It was never proven to be a homicide or a murder. The girl just died. It was a great mystery.
Interesting. So there wasn't really exactly, it didn't really come out that we were said that Don Berlin was the person behind, but it did leave a kind of a confused picture as to, because of the way that kind of jumped around. So yes. Could we clear that?
And I made so many mistakes in it. I said Lake Point Towers, and it was really the Hancock Building. I made too many mistakes in it. And Joe D was made superintendent of police, and he had death threats on him. And then at a later date, Brazak came in, and he demoted him. And eventually it went down from commander to captain, whatever. And he was a lieutenant, a field lieutenant. And that's how he served out his days. And later on, after he did serve out his days, he became a U.S. Marshal. He was appointed under the president at that time.
So, Don, if you're listening,
Don, the deepest apology I can possibly give you is coming out of my mouth right now. I'm sorry. I did not intend to upset you or associate you personally with this incident in any way whatsoever. It just came off the top of my head because I remembered the last name. That's all.
So the actual incident that was it was a Berlin, according to the newspaper. It was a guy named Marshall Berlin, and that's why the name confusion happened there, right, Red?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. And I've never heard of this. This happened before my time, but this Lorraine Kowalski was I guess a Playboy model. She's looked very pretty in that.
She was a bunny. She was a Playboy bunny. It made a lot of ink back in those days. In 1971, it made a lot of ink. It was very a controversial thing, just like everything else with politics. You know, it was very controversial. It was a tragedy, a big tragedy. A very bad tragedy.
Yeah, and the newspaper article reads that a wealthy businessman last night underwent 2 hours of police questioning about the death of a woman who plunged into the street early from his 90th floor Hancock Building apartment. 90th floor, that's up there. Marshall Berlin, 45, vice chairman of IS Berlin, was released after voluntarily signing a sworn statement in the office of the Damon Avenue homicide investigators. Fall to death, Miss Lorraine Miss Lorraine Kowalski, 29 years old, Sheridan Road. She fell to her death from the 6-room apartment after 4 a.m. Police homicide commander William Keating refused to divulge the contents of the statement. He said no charges were placed against Berlin, but the investigation was continuing and all information was being turned over to the state's attorney. Berlin, dressed in a tailored tweed suit, refused to comment. As he left the police station, police said he refused to take a lie detector test. It's the first death in a fall from the Hancock Building, a Delaware place, the tallest apartment office building in the world, police said. A night watchman said he heard a crash from the upper floors as the woman broke through the 54-inch double pane window. He said, oh, this is crazy. He said he saw the naked woman fall, her body seemingly disintegrating as it bounced off the side of the building about halfway down. Oh, the field engineer in the Hancock Building said he was amazed that the woman broke through the window. And then it goes on to say, tells windows strength. The windows are capable of withstanding 85 pounds of pressure per square foot with a 2.5 safety factor, said Frank Heidenreich, the engineer. He said the safety factor means that the windows should withstand more than 200 pounds of pressure per square foot before breaking. Quote, we had workmen inside the building fall off scaffolding against larger windows, and they were only single pane and not even break them. Heidenreichs added that he had no fears that a person might fall through the windows of the Hancock by accident. The windows are made of 1/4 inch, blah, 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 and it continues on page 5. But what got me is that halfway down, because the Hancock is it's tapered. So it's not a straight fall, in other words. And there's all this metal on the side. So as she fell, she was hitting it, and she was breaking, like you said, she was an ink spot on the sidewalk, right?
Right. It was a bad tragedy, very bad tragedy. It got a lot of publicity. People had their own opinions about it, and the press releases that they got from the authorities at the time.
Yeah. So this guy.
That's Joe D. Yeah.
Okay. So this guy, you knew him personally.
Yes, I did. I met him through Nicky Rosado.
Do tell.
Nicky Rosado was a police officer, and so was his brother Tony. Tony was killed at Cabrini Green right around in 1970. He was on a walk and talk team at the Cabrini Green, and he was killed by 2 snipers, which were caught, and they went to prison, and they're still in prison right now. They're alive in prison.
I'm sorry, you lost me a second. Joe DiLeonardi was shot by snipers?
No, I said Tony Rosado, Nick Rosado's brother, who I met Joe D through.
Gotcha.
Was
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so so you said to me anyway that this Joe DiLeonardi is he was rather quickly he got made. Yeah, you said made. Now that doesn't mean he got made into the mob.
No, he got made in the department. A lot of times, like people, Jimmy Koza would come over to me and say, well, when Mayor Byrne was in, he said, do you have anybody you can trust that we can get made? We can bring them up through sergeant, lieutenant, captain. So we have higher ranking people in the police department. That's what we call people on the job saying, well, he got made. Police officers used to say he got made. A police officer would understand that. Just like homicide, police officer would understand the word homicide. It's a homicide. Any death is a homicide until the inquest or somebody rules it something else, unless it happens in a hospital or something like that where they die of natural causes.
Okay.
This was unnatural causes, but there was
Okay.
there was no affiliation to Mr. Don Berlin in any way whatsoever. It's my ear. I just heard the name Berlin, and I thought, wow, I've heard that before. Where? And I made some mistakes, a lot of mistakes, really. I didn't do any research on it before. I was going by memory, and I apologize to you, Don. I really didn't want to drag your name into this or anything else. You have my sincerest apology, guy.
So, Red, I wouldn't go get hard on yourself or anything, because this happened in 1971, August 12th. This happened 6 years before I was even born. All right. Because that's why when you talked about it there and you were like, yeah, they had guys with cables running against the windows. And it just kind of, I floated me going, I've never heard of this. That's why I think I said I said, oh, that's interesting, because I'd never heard of it. And it was kind of off topic because it didn't have anything to do. Somebody asked about it had something to do with Richard Cain, and the answer was no. So, but that happened over 50 years ago. You were going off of memory.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the where you said it was actually the Hancock Center.
I even made a big blunder. I said it was the Lake Point Towers, and it wasn't.
Right. Now, Lorraine Kowalski.
I didn't even know her name. I did not know her name.
Didn't even know her name, huh? The Playboy bunny? Okay.
I never recalled it.
Got it. So toxicology reports said that she was intoxicated the time that this happened. But you remember on this thing, football players, they took the Bears. The Bears. They running at the windows in the
right. They were tethered with a cable, and they were wearing their helmets. They were suited up, and they ran them towards the windows to see if they could be broken.
Wait a second. Let me get this picture clear in my head. Okay. So they got the fridge out there, right?
And the fridge. That was in 85.
Good memory.
Pounds, man. The biscuit, they called him.
They got the biscuit out there, right? And
they didn't have the biscuit out there. This was in 1971.
So let me get this right. The Bears, they got them in full uniform, and they got belts on them with ropes, and they got helmets. They got helmets, and they're running at the windows up on the 90th floor trying to knock them out and in case they do, boom, go through, they're just going to end up hanging from the rope, and they can pull them back up then off the side of the building.
Well, the cable was so short that it would only break the window.
It wouldn't allow them to fall out, in other words.
No.
Okay. It would allow them to break. That would still be scary, though,
I wouldn't want to do it.
I wouldn't be volunteering to run at windows.
A good friend of mine, the Skogs, they were the first people to move into that building. Ludwig and his wife, Jane, they lived in Marina City before this, and it was in the newspaper. They were first residents to move in. They lived in Marina City before that. Before that, they lived in LaGrange, but he lost his driver's license because he used to go down and party on Rush Street, and they got all kinds of tickets for DUIs and stuff like that. So they decided to move into the city. But they were the first residents to live there, and that was in 4601. It was a corner unit that looked over the southeast corner of the building.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, it was a scary lookout. I mean, when you go up to the window. And in the bathrooms, they had a window that was probably maybe 8 or 10 inches wide that would open up, and the air just used to come through that place like you can't imagine. So I can imagine what it was like on the 90th floor. 46th floor, different.
Can't even imagine. Yeah. I'll tell you what, I lived in a high rise downtown St. Louis, maybe 25 or 30 stories. I don't recall. I could look that up. It was pretty tall though. The building windows all the way to the floor, to the ceiling. That was this
place.
I didn't like standing anywhere near those. Okay. I didn't like going near the windows and looking. It was just you get the vertigo feeling. I just, yeah.
As I looked out the windows on the 46th floor, you could see the side of the building as you look down, because it was shaped like this. It came down and went out, so you could see the side of the building. if you're up on the 90th floor, I would imagine if you look straight down and you didn't look out at Rush Street, you would see the building.
Yeah, of course. Of course. All right. So Joseph DiLeonardi, let's clear this up too, right? You said that he was the first person at the scene.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I'm reading something that says that he wasn't, and that his investigation in the role was minimal.
Well, he was the first detective that was on the scene. He was an Area 6 detective.
Okay, so maybe he wasn't the first cop on the scene, but he was the first detective, possibly.
Yes.
Is what you okay?
Yes.
And then also
they had crowd control and stuff like that with the first, 18th district police officers. It was crowd controls and trying to figure out what would happen. And he was the investigator that came in.
Okay, so
he did a very good job, I might add.
I also understand that many investigations were done with people who were there, including Carol Thompson, which was her roommate, and her friend, who said that she was clearly intoxicated and she was upset about something that she never made clear on her way into the building that night.
Something personal, probably.
Right. So anyway, it's not out of the scope of possibilities, however, that Superintendent DiLeonardi was made due to maybe some other things.
No, it's not. But the officers that I knew, the cops that I knew in the 18th district, they used to say he climbed very quickly to the top, and Byrne pushed him all the way up there. Jane Byrne, the mayor.
So that's what the scuttlebutt on the street.
When he got to the top, when he got to superintendent of police, there were death threats by police officers on his life, and they had to remove him. So he was asked to step down, and he did. But then Richard Brazak, the new superintendent of police, kept demoting him to where he thought he should be. And he wound up as a watch commander, a lieutenant watch commander, and he served out his time there at the Area 6, which would have been, I think, the 19th district at that time.
Okay. All right. So I think that clears the picture up.
I hope so. It's I apologize for my memory. I apologize for my if I hurt, if you're listening to this, Don, if I hurt you in any way or caused you discomfort in any way, I certainly apologize from the deepest of my heart, because I did not intend for anything like this to happen. I really didn't. I don't want to smudge your name in any way whatsoever, or even involve you in this, because certainly you're a man of integrity.
Awesome. Thanks, Red, for jumping in here and doing this quick broadcast with me.
You're welcome. God bless you, Don. Yeah, I hope you see this guy.
All right, have a great day. Mob Law.